Thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Maria Nate, and I am the Idaho Director for the State Freedom Caucus Network, and I'll be hosting this call tonight with Senator Brian Lenney, who is running for re-election in District 13. We are really grateful to have him on the call and to have all of you here on the call as well. And just a quick reminder, if you do want to ask a question, just press 0 on your phone's keypad, and you'll be transferred to a moderator who will take down your question and put you on hold, and then we'll get your question to Senator Lenney. So thanks again for joining Senator Lenney tonight. And I just want to go ahead and start with a quick introduction of Senator Lenney. I've known him for a couple of years right now, and he's just a normal guy, just like all of us. He's from Nampa. He's married to Rachel. They have 4 kids, a dog, and 13 chickens. Senator Lenney is one of our stars for conservatism in the Senate. He is a member of the Idaho Freedom Caucus. He was also awarded from CPAC the Award for Conservative Excellence. He's also the ILA Champion of Limited Government Award. He received that in 2024. And he has an A rating with the Idaho Freedom Foundation. So we're just really grateful to have Senator Lenney in the Senate. And you are well served, Nampa, by Senator Lenney. So hey, I'm going to kick it over to you, Brian, and if you want to just go ahead and why don't you just tell us a little bit about why you decided to run for Senate and a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thank you, Maria. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is a live call, and I do, just in case you're wondering, I do want to have this wrapped up by 8 o'clock because, you know, we got kids to put to bed and TV shows to watch and things like that. So, and, you know, you can, I believe it's pressing 0, right, Maria, to talk to submit questions, to ask questions?
Yep. Go ahead and press 0 anytime, and you'll get kicked over to a moderator, and they'll take your question.
Okay. So, I mean, the short version, kind of the 100,000-foot view of why I got into this in the first place, it really starts with the pandemic. You know, up until the pandemic, I moved to Nampa in 2010. So I've been in Nampa 14 years, moved here from Southern California. Zero political ambitions until about the pandemic. And, you know, I'd always paid more attention to, which I think a lot of people do, I've always paid more attention to national politics in D.C., what's the president doing, that kind of thing. And, you know, during 2020, 2021, I really started to realize that same systemic corruption that exists in Washington, D.C., also exists in all 50 states and every state house, including Boise. So we have, you know, Trump talked about draining the swamp. Well, I voted for Trump both times. Well, we also have a swamp in Boise. So that's, my eyes kind of got open, you know, during the pandemic. You know, there was a mass influx of cash into the government coffers, budgets blew up, corporations, including our hospitals here, got rich, people were paid to stay home. You know, we saw hyperinflation, that type of thing. So that's what really got me to take notice and say, wait. Idaho is supposed to be a conservative utopia, and it is compared to where I came from. And I still think it is. But, you know, when you see what the man's doing behind the curtain, it really made me mad. And there was another gentleman who's one of our House representatives, Representative Bruce Skog. A quote I always say, I heard him say he used to be on Nampa City Council. He said, when you get pissed off, you run for office. And that's kind of what got me into it in the first place a few years ago. And here we are just a couple years later, and it's already re-election time.
No kidding. Tell me about the kind of people that you think get elected to the Senate. Now that you've spent a couple of years there, tell me kind of like what kind of people are running, what kind of people get elected?
So it's been a fun 2 years. Like I've had fun. You know, there's a saying, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if someone made it up in the state house or if it's a national thing, but there's a saying called happy warriors. We're happy warriors. So we're in there fighting for people, but you know, I have a good time doing it. And something I've learned is just you learn it pretty quickly, but I learned it more this year, is there's kind of two types of people who get elected, and I don't think this is unique to Idaho at all. I think this is probably politics in every state. The first one is the yes men, and that's what, I don't even need to explain that. These are the ones who serve the lobbyist class, the bureaucrats, the executive branch, the governor. Maria, you've heard me talk about this. That's probably why you asked. I say this all the time. You have the yes men, the rubber stampers. They go in there, yes, sir, how do you want me to vote? What do you want me to do? That's the first type. The second, and I think that's the majority. And that's not, I'm not trying to be, trying to tear people down or be insulting. I just think that's kind of the reality we live in. Like Trump talked about, the swamp. You have the swamp. And then you have the watchmen. These are people who go in there. They realize that they are there to serve the citizens, the people who elected them. They know they exist for one purpose. I think it was, what was his name? The guy who wrote, Maria, do you know, he wrote the book, The Proper Rule of Government, Ezra something?
Oh, Ezra Taft Benson, yep.
Yeah, he wrote a book called The Proper Rule of Government, and if I recall correctly, he, excuse me, he basically said the proper role of government is to secure and protect individual rights. So you have the yes men and the watchmen, and like I said, and then there's people in the middle. Not everyone fits in one group. Not everyone has to fit in one group, but I think they tend to fit in one or the other groups. And then when you see, the yes men, kind of the swamp, the kind of, I would say, more establishment Republicans, they go in there and they kind of, they are told what to do by lobbyists. They are told what to do by the executive branch, and they do it, and they become cogs in the machine. The second type, which I would consider myself a watchman, I don't find my identity in being a senator. I don't care if somebody calls me senator in the hallways. I don't get excited by being invited to lunch with a lobbyist. Those types of things don't really sway me, because I know I'm in there to fight for individual rights, for constitutional rights, as opposed to corporate interests or lobbyist interests. And, as a member of the Idaho Freedom Caucus, I couldn't be more proud to be one of those watchmen. And that's why they want me gone. They want me to shut up, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, it's voicey to just vote yes on everything, because that's sort of the easy way out. The lobbyists want you to vote yes on all of their spending bills. The governor wants you to vote yes on every single action. And it takes a lot of courage to vote no on these bills, because you see what's happening. You see the bloated government. You see the bloated budgets, and you're really looking out for the people. And that's one of the things that I've noticed about you, Senator Lenney, is that you're fearless, and you will always stand up for the people, and you'll always do the right thing, no matter if the right thing is hard. And I think we need more people like that in our legislature, not yes men. So we really appreciate you being the watchman. And again, Nampa, I will just say that you are very well served by Senator Lenney. He's fun to watch on the floor. He's got a great sense of humor, and he also votes the right way. So it's like a win-win-win for everyone.
I wanted to make sure also, oh, go ahead, sorry. Were you going to say something about questions?
You go.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure that if you have a question, you should, we have a little chat thing, and I want to make sure it's working. If you do have a question about anything, bills, stuff like that, just go ahead and hit 0. So I think it's important, setting the stage for all of that, kind of setting the stage of who's in the Capitol and what they're doing in the Capitol. Got a call coming. Hold on, let me get rid of this. Interfering with my, there we go.
Tell them to call into your town hall.
Yeah. So, I think there's something that all of this leads to, right? There's, when you have this sort of dynamic in the Capitol, it leads to, there's an inevitable conclusion. You can't continue to go down the same road without eventually getting somewhere. If you're driving down a road, you're eventually going to get somewhere. And where we've got as a state in the State House is there was a study by a group called the Institute for Legislative Analysis, and they found that we have some of the country's most liberal Republicans. And they survey every state, all 50 states, and based on voting records, they said Idaho has some of the most liberal Republicans in the nation. And that's why we see this insane growth of government. You know, Maria, pre-pandemic, we had 8.9, our budget, our state budget was something like $8.9 billion, where now we're hovering around $14 billion. That's about a 67% growth in
That's
state
crazy.
spending, just from 2019 to as we're speaking now. And that's about twice what we'd expect. That's twice what we should expect when you look at inflation and population growth. It should be in the low 30s-ish, depending on who you ask. And we're almost at 70% growth. We have a massive welfare state. We're growing at an unprecedented rate, and it's not good. It's not good.
No, we are really growing. I don't think any of us got a 67.4% raise in the last 4 years. So, but we were able to give that to government. Hey, I just want to remind everybody that's in the conference right now that if you have any questions for Senator Lenney, you can just press 0, and we'll go ahead and get you connected so you can ask him your question. You know, Senator Lenney, one of the things that we don't talk about enough is how much federal money Idaho is taking. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh. So I talked about if we're going down the road, we're eventually going to get somewhere. So something we talked about a lot this year and last year is we have this, everyone knows we talk about national politics. We have a $34 trillion debt balloon in Washington, D.C. And it used to take about 6 years to add $1 trillion to the national debt. Now we're doing it every 90 to 100 days. I think the average was, some of them were even in 70 days. So what happens when Idaho takes all of this federal money is what we're doing is we're inflating that debt balloon in Washington, D.C. It's a supply and demand issue because Idaho says, hey, we want more money to fund all this radical growth. Washington, D.C. prints it and gives it to us, or the Fed prints it, I should say. And it's under the, you know, during the COVID crisis, it just went crazy. It went nuts. And we saw hyperinflation because printing money leads to inflation, but the only reason they're printing money is because the demand is there. So they supply it. So that's why when it boils down to your kitchen table, right? Like people can't afford groceries. People can't afford gas. I don't want to know. We're spending so much on gas and groceries right now, and then let alone housing prices. People are getting hit hard. And we you know, a lot of people think that the Idaho spending doesn't impact that. But no, us taking all of this federal money directly impacts inflation, if that makes sense. So that's why we go in there, and like you said, like a lot of the conservatives in the Idaho Freedom Caucus and things like that, we're pushing back against all of this overspending. It's reckless. By the end of the year, we're going to be at $37 trillion. A lot of legislators say, "Oh, well, that's federal money," you know, but that's still taxpayer money. So the Idaho's growth directly fuels the debt in D.C., which is fueling inflation. And when that bubble pops, our state's going to be in a bad place because roughly 40% of our state budget is federal money.
Right. Last time I checked, I was a federal taxpayer too. We all just got done filing our taxes and are well reminded what our tax burden is. So all of this money isn't free, and I think that's just what you are trying to remind people when you vote on these budgets, is that at some point we have to stop spending because we're headed off a cliff. So I really appreciate that you are holding the line on these budget issues. Hey, if you're in the call, would love to have you press 0, and you can ask a question of Senator Lenney. Okay, so it looks like we have someone here that wants to ask you about daylight savings time. So you ready for that?
Yeah,
let's
daylight
go ahead.
savings.
Here we go. Brian, hang on. Okay, Brian, you're on the call.
Okay, hello.
Hey.
So I noticed House Bill 584. It's the one to exempt Idaho from daylight savings time. It had passed the House, but it was never voted on by the Senate. I think it got into the State Affairs Committee and didn't go anywhere. I was just wondering how we would go about getting that bill like next year up for a vote. At least in my family, daylight savings time it's atrocious, and it takes weeks to recover from that switch. Anyway,
that's a great question, Senator Lenney. Do you have a response for that?
Yes. So yeah, thanks for the question, and Brian, good name. Do you spell your name with an I or a Y? I'm curious.
an I.
Oh, me too. The proper way. So here's a problem that kind of undergirds your question, Brian. That happens with a lot of bills, specifically in the last couple of years. So the daylight savings bill, yeah, I believe it was like, I just pulled it up here, 584. It passed 43 to 26 in the House, overwhelmingly. A problem we have in specifically state affairs is, first of all, I agree with you 1,000% on daylight savings. You'd actually be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be. I was surprised how many messages, emails, calls we get on daylight savings, because it wrecks people for at least, I would say at least a week, 2 weeks before you kind of get to normal. But the problem is something can pass. So I've had several bills, for instance, this year, just a month ago, and last year, several bills passed the House with an overwhelming veto-proof majority. They get to the Senate and they just get drawered. So there's a saying, you know, that when I first decided to run during the pandemic, there was a saying that the Idaho Senate is a place where good bills go to die. But it's actually quite true. We get good bills sometimes, but one chairman, so in this case, the Senate State Affairs chairman chose to not, I'm looking at it, looks like chose to not even give it a hearing.
Yep.
His reason for that, I'm not sure, but the solution to that is we get conservative chairmen who are watchmen, not yes men. And
that's exactly right. How many bills is he holding as yours, Brian, by the end of the legislative session? Wasn't he holding a couple of yours?
There were a handful. Top of my head, I had a bill that what was it? House Bill 493. It was a bill that banned mask mandates, like the COVID mask mandates. It was a bill that said no school, city, county, or no political subdivision in Idaho can implement a mask mandate. So that bill flew through the House committee. We started that in the House State Affairs Committee, and Nampa has a great representative. I think he does a really good job, Brent Crane. He's the head of the House State Affairs Committee. We even had a Democrat vote for it in the committee. It passed the House saying, hey, we're not going to mask our kids, like no more mask mandates. And it got to Senate State Affairs. I couldn't even get a hearing on it. I went to the chairman's office. And this is welcome to Idaho, but I would guess this dynamic exists in every state house. I went to the chairman's office. I said, hey, when are we going to do a hearing on this mask bill? Oh, we're not interested in hearing it. I said, well, you know what? You know who's interested in hearing it is the people of Idaho. This shouldn't even be a political. This shouldn't be a political issue. And I had another bill held in Senate State Affairs that was a bill to abolish diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucracies in higher education. That bill as well held in Senate State Affairs. I was a co-sponsor on a campus carry bill that would allow teachers and school employees to carry guns on campus. That bill was held in Senate State Affairs. So the problem isn't the bills so much, it's the people pulling the levers.
Right. He basically is, he has veto power over any legislation that comes through his committee that he doesn't want to hear. So he is acting for the entire state instead of just representing his district. And, you know, that was a huge problem in the House, and that's gotten better in the House, but now it's just shifted over to the Senate. So you're exactly right. The only way to change that is to change the composition of the legislature. So okay, I just want to remind people, so we're here with Senator Lenney doing his town hall, and if you have any questions, just press 0, and you'll be able to ask your questions to Senator Lenney. Hey, why don't you tell us some of your victories that you've had this session?
That is, so yeah, that's a good good segue. There's several victories. So I think, you know, you can measure victories in a couple ways. One is, hey, how much good stuff did we get through, or you know, did I support or fight for or push through? And the other one is, how much bad stuff did we stop? And I think both are equally important, you know, because a lot of people want to push a lot of really bad things. And in the Senate, specifically in the Senate, oftentimes these things came down to one vote, pass or fail. So one person, quite literally, in the Idaho Senate can make a difference. And I mean, the guy running against me on a lot of these bills would have probably voted the other way, which is why it's important to have, you know, actual conservatives in there instead of kind of these establishment guys. A couple legislative wins. So something that made the news, and this isn't exclusive to me, obviously, but it takes a certain amount of votes to get these things through. I'd say the first one was we had a budget reform that I think is the first time Idaho's ever done this. So basically, before I got there, when the other guy was in charge of the Finance Committee, actually, they just passed these big omnibus budget bills where everything was included in one bill, instead of, you know, line items or basically all of the old spending and all of the new spending was in one bill. That's probably a better way to put it. So then when we would get the bills up until this year, when we changed it, and it was the Idaho Freedom Caucus who led this charge and the conservatives who work with us, we changed this process. But up until this year, you would have to vote on the old spending and the new spending for like any particular agency in one bill. So even if you said, hey, I want to fund whatever, Idaho Department of Transportation, but I don't like this new spending item, you just, it's all or nothing. So we had a big budget fight, and it was a fight, and we split those up. So now we vote on kind of the old spending in one bill, and all of the increases in the new spending, those are separate bills. That was a big win.
You could kind of just say you're voting on needs versus wants. So the first set of budgets that you voted for would sort of be the maintenance budgets, and those were the needs, keep the lights on, the doors open. And then the second set of budgets that came through would be like the fluff. Essentially,
yeah, new spending, you know, hey, I want a helicopter, hey, I want to grow my agent. You know, there's budgets, there's agencies that have grown by several 100% year over year.
Wow.
Last year we had a bill, I should say the spending has. So for instance, last year we had a bill that was the Secretary of State's budget bill that was a 200-something% increase year over year. So of course I voted no against it. Conservatives don't unnecessarily grow government, right? But the budget reform was a fight we had at the beginning of the year, and the conservatives won. So what that does is it leads to fiscal transparency and accountability. That was a big one. We passed a mandatory minimum bill to kind of take a stand against drug traffickers, specifically fentanyl, but it did kind of address other drug trafficking as well. So that was House Bill 406, I believe. And that's something people wanted. Nampa, specifically, Canyon County has a drug and a gang problem. It's not as bad as it used to be, but that was a big win. I think there's a lot, Maria, but you know, we passed a bill that was carried by the Freedom Caucus members to, and this is huge, and I feel like it flew under the radar, kind of. It was House Bill 498, which requires age verification for basically pornography on websites, and that became law. And what that does is it essentially makes pornography providers, people like Pornhub and stuff like that, it makes them pull out and leave the state, because it says, hey, if you're going to provide pornographic content, you have to age verify. And if you don't, you know, so that was, we passed that,
That's a big one. In Utah, when they passed a similar bill, Pornhub just decided not to offer their services there, and because they didn't want to deal with that. So that's a big step in protecting kids from harmful stuff on the internet. So good on you. Hey, tell me about this guaranteed basic income. What is that?
We had, so that was a bill I sponsored that was signed into law last month, I believe, by the governor. The guaranteed and the universal basic income program. So that's a preemption bill, and here's why we did it. So there's this idea, it's pushed by groups like World Economic Forum, different kind of left-leaning socialist type groups, to provide universal basic income for people. Think of welfare on steroids. So there's this, and this idea has been around forever. It's not new. There was a resurgence of that in 2010 during the housing crash. And then we actually did it during the pandemic. During 2020, we paid people to stay home. There were no strings attached. Here's some money. Take it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So what we, and I believe it was 125 cities and 34 states have and currently have passed or currently do have universal basic income programs where you're literally just paying people to stay home. Here's some money, go live off of it. So this was a preemption bill saying that Idaho's never going to go down this road again, or not going to go down this road in the first place. And part of my argument on the Senate floor was, well, is this a problem happening in Idaho? Do we really need this? I said, it's not happening in Idaho, and this bill will make sure it never does happen. The best time to put guardrails on a windy mountain road is before you start sending traffic down it, not after, and cars are flying off the highway. So that was and you know, of course, the Democrats voted against it, which is very, very telling.
Right.
You know, that they would vote against a bill like that. But that just says, hey, keep your socialist garbage out of Idaho. We're not going to do that stuff. So,
well, it's
34
interesting
states.
Because last year you passed a prohibition of ranked choice voting, and look, now it's on. They're going to get that on the ballot. So it is important to put up these guardrails to stop this kind of stuff from happening in Idaho. So that was a good bill. I'm glad that got passed and signed. Tell me about the pesticide bill, the zombie bill that never dies.
So this is one that this is a bill we stopped, and I believe it was just by a few. I think if two people voted differently, the outcome would have been different. We stopped this by 2 votes, and this one we did the work on. We whipped the votes. We went around and made sure that this bill did not pass. So we had a bill, Bayer. People remember Monsanto, Roundup, you know, the chemical Roundup, all the lawsuits about the cancer happening and things like that. So Bayer purchased Monsanto. I can never say it, Monsanto. And they've been going on. They've been getting taken to court over these lawsuits for Roundup, and people are claiming, hey, I got cancer or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's, and it's caused by Roundup, which is what they spray on the crops for weed killer. I don't want to get way into how it works, but so Bayer came into our state. They donated donated money to Senate leadership in January, which is interesting. you can see, hey, Bayer came in, they gave everyone donations, and what do you know? What do we have on the Senate floor? We have a bill to give Bayer, a multi-billion-dollar multinational pharmaceutical company, lifetime immunity from lawsuits. So in Idaho. So, I was kind of angry actually when I saw the bill. I said, what are we doing? People from Nampa didn't send me to the state house to give lifetime immunity to a multi-billion-dollar multinational pharmaceutical company. And if you're putting out a product that harms people, which in my opinion there is evidence that is the case, you shouldn't get lifetime immunity from it. And why are we doing this in Idaho? So we shut that bill down. The lobbyists were not happy about it. They brought back a second version, didn't make it, and they brought back a third version that didn't make it. So we have Bayer, talk about out-of-state money influencing politics. They had 3 bills that they put up, but they all got shot down, and thankfully they didn't make it. So that's some of these things people don't see, because if they don't make the headlines, like especially if we stop a bill in a committee, sometimes it doesn't make the headlines. But that was one. There was another one, Maria, that it was kind of a redemption story. There was a library bill that came through. There was a bad one, and then there was a good one. So we had a bill that would have made it essentially impossible. Not impossible. It would have made it very difficult for parents to get obscene materials out of libraries. Now, do I think there's a pandemic of obscene materials in libraries? No. Is it in there? A lot of libraries, yes, including the Nampa and Caldwell libraries. That doesn't mean it's, just dripping off the shelves or whatever, but there are materials in there that should not be put in front of kids. So there was one bill that made it to the Senate floor, and it was not a good bill. I think the intentions were right, but that bill deserved to die, and we did our work and we did our homework, and I was the deciding vote to stop that bill. It was 17 yes, 18 no's. And like I said, one person can make a difference in the Senate. And then, as you know, the 710 came through, House Bill 710, which was a good library bill, which actually created a very simple process, and we passed that one. So but if we never stopped the bad one, the good one, it wouldn't have paved the way for the good one to come.
Yeah.
So,
and I just think people need to be reminded too that libraries are public agencies, and so they're subject to public oversight, and so it's completely within the bounds of the legislature to do this. So you're not limiting free speech. You're just putting objectionable material where it belongs in the adult shelves or sections. So I think that was a good bill. So good job, guys.
Yeah. Hey, we had a question. Or go ahead.
Let me I just want to remind people that if you want to ask a question, don't be shy. Just press 0, pound that 0, and get on and ask Senator Lenney your question. But I see what you're talking about lobbyists. Like, how often are lobbyists in the Capitol during the passing of bills, and what kind of a role do they play in Idaho politics? What have you seen since you've been there?
That was someone's question, but somehow the connection part didn't work, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so lobbyists outnumber legislators, I think almost 4 to 1, 5 to 1. So we have 105 legislators, and last time I checked, there was over 400 plus lobbyists. So they are in the Capitol just as much or probably even more so than most legislators are. So lobbyists they're roaming the hallways, they're meeting with legislators, they're taking people out to lunch, out to drinks, out to dinner, out to, God knows what. And they have a huge influence in Idaho politics, And like I said earlier, we have kind of the yes men and the watchmen. The yes men, they live for lobbyists. Oh, so-and-so took me out to lunch, therefore I'm a big deal, where I don't serve the lobbyist class. I really don't care what the lobbyists think about me. There's a handful of good ones. There's some people lobbying for the same ideas that I believe in. There's some conservative lobbyists, but when I say some, I mean some. I can count them on one hand.
True.
So I mean, lobbyists they're everywhere. They're always everywhere. They're in every committee. They're watching all the halls. They're in the parking lot. They're everywhere, all the time, influencing legislation. They're in and out of the governor's office. They're in and out of everyone's office, but not really so much my office. You know, I had this was kind of funny. I had a group of a lobbyist complain to someone recently, and then that person said, "Hey, I was talking to this lobbyist guy. You know what he said? He's essentially like they might not endorse you," which I could really care less about most endorsements. I'm here for the people, not a lobby group. If I get an endorsement, great. If I don't, you know, I don't really care. But he said, you know, this lobbyist said they might not endorse you, and I said, oh, what, why? I seem to have kind of voted their way, if that makes sense, during the session. Like, I don't see why they would not like me based on my votes. Like, we seem to line up on some things. And they said, well, it's because you don't talk to them in the hallways.
Oh, gosh. How high school.
Yeah, you don't talk to them in the hallways. And it's not that I snub people or ignore people. It's like, if I want to talk to you, I will come talk to you. If you want to talk to me, you know where to find me. You know, you don't go to their events and you don't go to lunches. And I said, yeah, I'd rather be home hanging out with my family, not hanging out with a bunch of lobbyists. You know, at the end of the day when the session ends, sometimes we're there 12-plus hours or whatever. I'd rather go home and, like, tuck my kids and not go hang out with a bunch of lobbyists. So, but they are, it's a big part of
Brian,
it.
let me just, so this just kind of goes back to you being a normal guy from Nampa with a wife and 4 kids, a dog, and 13 chickens. I mean, you have a life outside of the legislature, and it's a part-time job that doesn't pay a whole ton of money. And so for you have to commute in from Nampa every day, and this is the lobbyist full-time job. And they get paid very, very well. And even just to go back to what you were talking about at the beginning of this call, during COVID, with that massive influx of cash, these lobbyists figured out how to monetize government. And so now what they're doing is working to put legislators in that will continue the gravy train, just like you said. And because you're not there for the lobbyists, you're there for the people, you're putting a stop to that. And so, of course, the big money isn't happy with you. And so I think you've mentioned just in talking with me about what's going on in your district with the door knockers that are going on there. You know, tell us a little bit about that, like what the amount of money and time that's being spent against you.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. There's, last I checked, I think it was something like $120,000 that is being spent to try and unelect myself and a few other conservatives in Canyon County. So I have a big target on my back from these kind of establishment types and these, you know what I mean? They want yes men. They don't want watchmen. I don't need to explain. They definitely want yes men who are like rubber stamp. For instance, the guy running against me, he's the guy I beat last time as well. He voted for literally every single spending bill last time he was in office. Last session, before I came in and replaced him, he voted for every single spending bill. And
okay, let's just stop there for a second. Yeah, so let's just stop there for a second. When you say he voted for every single spending bill, there is probably a lobbyist attached to much of that spending whose job it is to get that spending passed so that it can go to either a corporate crony or to another government agency. So really the only person standing between all of that money being spent on this cronyism, this bloated government, are people like you in the Idaho Freedom Caucus. So that's what I really want people to understand, is that as they monetize government, you have to have legislators like Senator Lenney who stand up and say, no, I'm here for the people. I don't care if you're getting paid 25 grand to get this piece of legislation passed. I'm going to say no because I'm here for the people. And that is, Nampa, who you have with Senator Lenney. So it is so important. If you care about your tax dollars, you care about your pocketbook, he's the guy you need to have there, because he will stand up to the corporate interests and say no to them. And that takes courage. And let me tell you something else. I'm on my soapbox here, so give me a second here. But courage begets courage. And so when you have people like Senator Lenney, he will lead out with courage, and then people will follow that. And this is what we need right now in Idaho. So you need to send him back, and you need to send him back with a strong message to his opponent that says, we're done with you, you're a retread, we're moving on. So I'm really appreciative of what you're doing there in the legislature.
Well, thanks. Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. So what's been going on since last year, I think it started in October, November. I'm sure everyone on this call they have these TV ads that are almost laughable to me. These attack ads, these TV ads, these door knockers, essentially trying to, they're spreading all kinds of lies, essentially trying to paint me as some sort of closet liberal or something. And I've had people, for instance, today, Maria, I know you're not in Nampa, but today the Idaho Press Tribune came out with an article comparing me to the guy running against me, and they said the choice is between this is what the reporter said. I didn't tell her. This is her take on it, and she's at the Capitol, I think, every day. Besides lobbyists, you have reporters there every day. There's a lot of eyeballs watching. And her take on it in Idaho Press Tribune this morning was, she said the choice is between Senator Brian Lenney, a member of the ultra-conservative Idaho Freedom Caucus, or the other guy who's, and this is her words, more of an establishment Republican. And there you go. Yeah, and I mean, like, just the articles, that really is the choice, because a lot of these votes that we stopped by one vote, for instance, we killed, this is worth mentioning, we killed two budget bills, two spending bills on the Senate floor this year. Two of them, I think maybe three, no, two. And Maria, the last time the Idaho Senate, which is fairly moderate, everyone thinks we're in this conservative utopia. I mean, it depends on what you're comparing it to, but my bar's pretty high, and Idaho's not there. The last time the Idaho Senate killed a spending bill, meaning voted it down and sent it back to the committee where they rework it, then they give you a clean bill. That's all you're doing, by the way, when you vote no on a spending bill. You're saying, hey, send it back, trim the fat, and give me a new bill. We killed two, but the last time the Idaho Senate did that was 2019. They killed three spending bills 2019, and up until last month, for 5 years, they didn't kill one spending bill. And I think what's interesting is the guy running against me, who was in the Idaho Senate before I replaced him, and he's running against me again. Those three bills they killed in 2019, he even voted for those. So, I mean, he's pretty much never met a spending bill he didn't want to take home and marry.
Well, let's just go back to something else that you talked about, too. We went from an $8.9 billion budget to a $13.9 billion budget. So that's a 67% increase in spending. That's insane. And so it has to stop. And Senator Lenney is working really hard to stop that. So we need to absolutely stop sending yes men to the legislature. Send people that care about your taxes. We're winding down here in the last few minutes. Senator, can you tell us sort of what your legislative priorities would be for next session?
So for 2020, well, they've kind of been they've been the same the whole time, really. I ran on these things, and we really kind of kicked off the Idaho Freedom Caucus in 2023. It was around, but it wasn't being, I don't think we were as strong or unified, but with what happened in 2022, a lot of really good, very principled, courageous, and I'm not even talking about myself because that would be weird, but a lot of really principled, courageous conservatives got elected in 2022, and we said, hey, this Idaho Freedom Caucus thing, we need to go in there and act as a team. And we came out with legislative priorities that are overarching, and we kind of have bills and things that kind of fit in. So there's basically 4 priorities, and they're this. And they haven't changed. Maybe they'll change in the future, but right now they haven't changed. And in order, the first one is to protect constitutional rights. We talked about that book by Ezra Taft Benson, I think his name was, said the proper role of government is to secure and protect individual rights for residents. That's our number 1 priority, protecting constitutional rights, not corporate interests, not what the governor wants, but constitutional rights. So I have, going forward, there's this big monster at the door. A lot of people talk about it, but they sure don't talk about it enough, is we have this whole woke agenda. We have the World Economic Forum pushing this great reset, and it's a very real, very tangible thing. It's not a conspiracy theory where they, their goal is by 2030, they say you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. They want to abolish private property. They want to abolish capitalism. That's the monster at the door, and it's happening right now. It's happening right now. So pushing back against this globalist woke agenda is huge. There's free speech issues. There's Second Amendment issues that we need to shore up in Idaho. I know we don't have a whole lot of time here, so that's the first one. And then there's health freedom issues. The mask mandates, the vaccine mandates. I had a bill that was so close to passing. But again, we have a very moderate to liberal Senate, the majority of the Senate, or Democrats, and in some cases you can't see a difference. I had a bill to add a layer of accountability for Idaho's public health districts. Now, if you remember, during the pandemic, the public health districts were the ones who were responsible for the lockdowns, the mask mandates, the social distancing, moms being arrested in parks, all that. So I had a bill saying, hey, let's add a layer of accountability here, because right now, most people don't know this, public health districts have unlimited power. They can do anything they want, according to Idaho code. It says they have the power to do all things. So I want to bring that back, and hopefully if we get more conservatives elected, that bill died on a tie vote in the committee, and it's a real bummer because it passed the House. This is one of those bills, like I was talking with Brian earlier. That bill passed the House out of committee, passed overwhelmingly through the House, got to the Senate committee. They played some games with it, put it in a committee where they knew it would probably die, and it died on a tie vote in committee. If we would have had one more conservative in that committee, I think we would have had that. Briefly, let me go through these things, and then we can kind of, officially wrap it up. Priorities going forward. So the first one is protecting constitutional rights. The second one is fiscal responsibility, transparency, and accountability. We already talked about budget reform. Idaho has a massive problem with federal money. We're addicted to federal money. 40% of our budget-ish is federal dollars. And when that, like I said, when that debt balloon pops in Washington, D.C., guess what? 40% of our state goes away. And then all this overspending and all the growth, it's insane to me that our government has grown from 2019 to 2024 by 67%. Our income hasn't grown by 67%. It's actually done the opposite. So we go in there. Priority number 2 is fighting for more budget reform, more transparency, less overspending, less federal money. Because, Maria, this is something you told me, I think, a year ago or something, but I remember it. You said these federal dollars don't come with, people say strings attached. They don't come with strings. They come with chains. And they enslave us and our kids and grandkids. So less growth, less spending. We need to prepare for hard times because I think hard times are coming. And there's 2 more out of the 4. So first one is protect constitutional rights. There's a lot that falls under that. Second one is fiscal responsibility, I guess you could call it. and accountability. You know, the guy running against me, my challenger, he calls himself a fiscal conservative, but he voted for almost all of that new spending. When we talk about the spending from 2019 to today, he voted for almost all of that. So last two are restoring quality education. That I think speaks for itself. That's fixing what's broken in our public school systems and pushing for, you know, more school choice, more money to follow kids and parents. And then the last one is supporting and protecting families and children. There's a trend in Idaho that we've seen a lot of bills, at least since I've been in there, but I know this didn't start a couple years ago. There's a trend in Idaho where we're trying to replace families with government. Hey, hey, it's okay, the government's here, we're here to save you. So we go in there as Idaho Freedom Caucus, we say, no, we're going to protect constitutional rights. We're going to fight for fiscal responsibility and transparency. We're going to restore quality education, and we're going to support and protect families and children. So that's the agenda from kind of the 100,000-foot view.
That's great. That's really good. Again, I really appreciate your conservative stance. I appreciate your courage on the floor and your ability to articulate the point and to do it in a happy warrior way. If you don't know Senator Lenney, he's just great to watch on the floor. He sends out great newsletters. He's just really an enjoyable person to be around. And we really need more of that in the legislature, people that are happy to be there, happy to do the work. And again, he is just like you. He's not some big wig politician there to, you know, get a title and be taken out to dinner by lobbyists. He's there to represent the people. So again, Nampa, you are well served by Senator Lenney. I just want to remind people that Election Day is May 21st, and voting early, I believe you can request your absentee ballot now, and you can also vote early. That window will open pretty soon. And Senator, why don't you tell people how they can reach out to you and where they can find you online?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on X, formerly known as Twitter and Facebook, but also email and text. You can text me. My personal cell phone number is 208-614-1289. My email is just BL, Brian Lenney, BL for Idaho @gmail.com. If you go to votelenney.com, that's my main website. It has just all kinds of stuff on there. There's videos for educational purposes of different debates and stuff I've done, kind of debating different bills in committee and on the floor. There's position policies. There's links to everything. So votelenney.com is the main place to go, and everything is linked there.
That's great. Yes. It is great and fun to watch Senator Lenney on Twitter. He's really just speaking the truth to people, and it's refreshing to have that kind of honesty in the legislature, and we need more of that. So send him and send some conservative help with him as well. We all need that. We're really proud to have Senator Lenney in the Idaho Freedom Caucus, and again, you're really well represented. So I don't think we have any more questions. It looks like we've got it ready to wrap up. So if you have any parting thoughts, it's all you.
No, I'm good. I mean, people need to realize the last thought, I guess, would be that May 21st, and I'll send a lot of people on this call will probably get letters from me and stuff in the mail pretty soon here. I'm sending some stuff out next week instead of carpet bombing everyone and spamming you with tons of stuff. But May 21st is where you get to decide what type of Republican you have representing you. A yes man or a watchman? Do you have someone who's an establishment Republican or an ultra-conservative, as the reporter called me today, member of the Idaho Freedom Caucus? So May 21st is in 85% of Idaho is where the real election is, because Democrats just don't win in most of Idaho. So the primary is the election. So mark that on your calendar and be sure to show up and vote. And thanks, everyone. I know it's been we're just hitting an hour here, so I don't want to keep anyone any longer, but I do appreciate everyone for joining today. It's been really fun.